Slavery, the great oppressor of the human soul. How humiliating would it be for anyone to be in a situation where they have to go to some person or something and say, "Yes, Master." Having someone that tells you where you can be and where you can't be, when you can go somewhere, when you can't, what you can participate in, what you can't participate in, and yet countless people are still in this situation today, and they don't even know it. And that's what we're going to talk about today on this edition of Audacious Faith. For most of my life, I had a secret master that I really didn't realize. It told me everything about what I was going to do in life. And that secret master is a secret master for many of you as well. It's called money. And one of the things that I knew about money was I didn't have much of it. I had more month than I had check. I would put money into the savings account. It would bounce back out into my regular account and then completely out by the end of the month. And really, it dictated everything that I did, and especially the things that I was not able to do. And quite honestly, I didn't see any way out of it. It was something that I experienced, not just for a few years, but for decades. And there were times when literally there was just no way to even see how to pay the bills, no way to provide for the family. It's a very difficult thing. So many opportunities that I had that I lost out on, and so many things that I would have wanted to do that was completely dictated by this secret master. So that's the subject we're going to talk about today. And joining me for this podcast is a good friend of mine, somebody who I respect very much. And he is a family man, married. In fact, I even had the opportunity to perform his wedding, which was a great privilege. Now has 2 young boys that are just the light of his life, I know, and with his wife as well. Just a great family, and also is a business partner and has built a great team and doing some great things in his industry as well. So I'd like to welcome today Mr. Elson Mills.
Thank you for having me.
So great to have you with, and we're going to talk about this subject because it's something that we both really have experienced at times in life.
We absolutely have.
And the great thing about it, and I think this is what it is, because we've been on one side of it, and now we're kind of moving through and seeing some change on how getting some of this situation out of the way truly just changes everything that we do in life. Mm-hmm. And so, but having been there, I think it's a great way to be able to take people through the progression. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
So let's start off right. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your family. I mean, I know, but the audience doesn't know. I mean, how is married life treating you at this point?
Oh, married life is treating me great. So I am obviously married. Me and Tatiana have been married for 6 years now. Wow. Yeah, 2015. We actually got married on Mother's Day in 2015. It was 5/10/15, so May 10th. 2015.
Awesome.
And we have 2 boys. Ezra is 2.5 now, and Ezekiel is 8 months as of last week. So they are moving a lot. They're having a lot of fun and trying our patience. But it's a blessing. So no worries there.
It is, and you get to spend a lot of time with them because you're able to do a lot of your work from home, which is awesome. So,
exactly.
So that's a great blessing as well, right?
Yes.
Now, as we talk about this area of money, because it's something that like we said, affects a lot of people. Early on in married life, especially, for the first few years of that, I know that there was financial struggles. And I think that you would probably agree that those are some of the greatest learning times. It's not necessarily something that we would ask for, but it's something where we really see God show up. And maybe kind of elaborate a little bit. How did the financial stress play into the early married years? I mean, I know that was a challenge.
Well, I mean, obviously no marriage is perfect, and me and Tatiana continuously try to grow, especially early in our marriage. We had a couple issues. We had communication issues. We had money issues. Most of the communication issues were talking about different things associated to not having the money we needed to do the basic things to get by. So yeah, it was a struggle. Majority of the things that we ended up kind of going back and forth over trying to figure out had to do with money, and it adds to the stress. And it's one of the biggest causes of divorce in our society right now. So it wasn't the simplest time, I'll put it that way.
Well, just so that people can relate to where we're coming from, I know there was a time in my life when literally it was the beginning of the month, we just spent the money on the particular rent. There was no money left, and there was not going to be any money coming for weeks.
Right.
And we had $28 in the account and kids and trying to figure out, and I know that you've been in similar situations to that. How did it feel to just, as far as faith is concerned, or how did you get through that when it seemed like there was just a huge mountain and there was a helpless feeling, wasn't there?
Yeah, it's extremely helpless feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So not necessarily knowing where the next income is going to come from, how the next bill is going to be paid, how you're going to get put food on the table, especially as a male and as somebody that the goal is for me to be the head of the household and being able to provide for my family. Right. Not being able to do that is extremely difficult and very trying on your patience, on your thought process, on your faith, just like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But the real way to be able to get over that is just it's what I call or not what I call, but what I've been taught, the word is touchstone. It's not a physical, actual stone, but the whole point is remembering God's goodness. So over time in my life, we've had a ton of financial struggles, but here's the thing, I'm still here. And also that everything has always been taken care of. It might not have been taken care of in the way I wanted, the time period I wanted, with the amount of money that I wanted to, but ultimately it was taken care of. So I can always go back to that, knowing that whatever challenge I'm going to have, especially financially, will still be taken care of regardless. And that's where that's allowed me to continue having that faith.
Absolutely. That's an awesome answer. So that faith, here's a question, because I think everyone that gets put in that situation and they're trying to serve God, they're trying to do the right things, they're trying to put God first, and yet it seems that the pressures, like the walls, are just coming in.
Yeah.
There's that moment of temptation, that moment that says, all right, I can't wait. I can't wait on God anymore. Mm-hmm. This seems to be the path that he was taking me. We had this conversation.
Yep.
We're in the office. We had been working together and building stuff for several years. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to follow God, but it's not working.
Yeah.
And there's that moment of truth. It's like, was God lying to me the whole time? And this was just all a big mistake? Or do I have to have the faith to come? Explain the process that went there.
Well, when it comes to that specific conversation on the struggles when it comes to waiting, there's two things. And this is something I had to learn from mentorship. The word wait on God. Most people think you sit still and wait for God to show up and, the heavens part and him to do something in your life. But that's not what it means. So somebody, they gave me an analogy and said, when you go to a restaurant, who's the first person that you talk to when you sit down? And they said, your waiter. And what does that person do? He serves you, right? So he's the person that's actively serving. He said, if you want to, quote unquote, wait on God, if you're in prayer and those things aren't happening yet, then go serve him first and all those things will be added to you. And then I thought, it's like mind blown moment. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was a period of time where I was serving, but it wasn't necessarily in my purpose, but I didn't even know what that was. And we can probably talk about that throughout this process, but I didn't even know what that was. At the time I was serving in the church, I was a part of the it was more of like the health ministry. Okay. So they had a kind of a cafe at the church. I go to a relatively large church, a cafe where they have healthy food, things like that. So me and my wife were vegan, so we were serving there. It was fine. We learned a lot of things. We learned how to make some really good smoothies. Nice. But outside of that, it really, that was good serving, and that's what we were doing to help, but it really wasn't part of my calling. It wasn't a part of my purpose, but I didn't really know what that was, and until I got an answer for it, I just went and did what I was supposed to do. Okay. It was a period of time where it was extreme financial stress. Nothing was going on, praying every day, multiple times a day, no answers from God. And God speaks to me more through other people and through like books. So I used to, when I really didn't know what I was supposed to be doing in my next steps were, it's just kind of weird, but I used to do it and it worked. I would go to Barnes and Noble and walk into the Christian section and just look through and look around at all the books. And every single time there was something like the Holy Spirit just caught me when I hit a specific book and I look at it, and the goal was for me to go and read it. I'm an avid learner, and there was always something in there specifically that I needed, and he made sure I caught it every single time. Or I might be walking through Barnes and Noble and somebody walks up to me and says something within this next month, something's going to go amazing for you. And I'm just like, okay. Right. And I don't know what it is about me, Barnes and Noble, and God, but apparently that's where he used to speak to me. There, huh? But ultimately, I love to read, and I was a big personal growth person, so I spent a lot of time there. So I guess it's really appropriate that was the case. But in this specific situation, what happened, I was driving home one day. I was extremely frustrated. There was no money coming in, no clientele. I just didn't know what to do anymore. And I was praying in the car, and I was crying on the way. And I was like, God, just tell me what you want to do. No more like books, no more anything. Just tell me. And literally within 30 seconds of that, I got a message on my phone. I know you're not supposed to be looking at your phone while you're driving, but I got a message on my phone. It was actually a Facebook message from an individual at the church that runs a leadership program for youth and entrepreneurs, but it's biblically and spiritually based at the church, asking me if I wanted to participate. That mentor I told you that talked about the waiting introduced us maybe a year prior. And that was it. And then all of a sudden, they're having a new class come up, and he asked me if I wanted to be a coach. And I immediately just said yes. I didn't care what was going on. And I'm the type of person, if God tells me to do something, I'm just going to do it. I don't care anything. So I know business was struggling. I know we needed to pay the bills. I went home and told my wife I was going to put all of my concentration on something I didn't even know about that was a volunteer serving position at the church. It was not a paid position, but I was going to do it anyway. Why? Because God told me I was supposed to. And ultimately it was, whatever I'm supposed to be doing in life is associated to this. So I'm just going to do this and see what happens. I don't care about money. It'll come. I don't know how. And that's kind of where it came from. The only reason that I didn't freak out in that time, because I'll tell you, Tatiana freaked out by a lot. I slept on the couch that night. But sometimes when you're following what you're supposed to follow, you sleep on the couch. But it was because I had this overwhelming peace that came over me about it, and it stayed there the entire time. Like literally nothing fazed me. The stress was gone. Everything was gone. And that's why I knew I was supposed to do that and focus on it. So that's where the whole how do you have faith and follow what God's plans for you are, is number one, you ask him what those plans are. And number two, when and you serve in the meantime. Number three is when he tells you to do it, just do it. and everything will work out, trust. Now,
would you bringing this up, and you mentioned the story, even the reaction, because, and that makes it, and we're not going to pick on her, let's face it, that's a common reaction.
Correct.
Right? We can understand why she would react that way.
Of course.
Or most people would react that way. And that's where the verse comes in that you made reference to. Seeking first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all the other things will be added.
Right.
He adds them. And I believe that a lot of us get to that point in life where we tried everything we could and put all the effort in that we could to add it.
Yeah.
And to do it. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what a responsible husband, this is what a responsible man does, or woman, or whoever, right? And I just don't get it. It's just not working. And there's that point, especially for people of faith, that many will go through, and maybe you're going through this right now, where God's saying, will you just relax? And you're like, how can we relax? And you're like, you've already tried everything, and it's obviously you can't do it. So now just do what I tell you and seek me first, and I got this.
Right.
And then the time comes. And it's not necessarily instant, right? It wasn't instant, but there's that requirement of that faith that goes along. So let's go through this process then when it comes to just our personal finances, the home, everything. And I believe that the Bible, I think you would agree with me, we need a business partner.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And God is that business partner.
It's a pretty good business.
Now it's a pretty great deal that he actually sets up when you think about it. He's set up with a 90-10 split. Mm-hmm. All right? And you think that doesn't sound fair. Well, you're right, it doesn't sound fair, but we get the 90, right? A 90-10 split, and in that 90-10 split, he promises to increase, and fill the barns when we give him the 10. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, not only will he bless in that way, but, he's just going to watch over everything. There's just one condition. And that is, don't even think about getting greedy and stealing the 10.
Right.
Right? But a lot of times we're in a situation, especially when there ain't no money there to begin with.
Right.
And now we're supposed to, but seriously, if you're already broke, can you live on 90% of what you're already broke with? I mean, it's just 10%, right? So it's that area of faith, right? And so isn't it true that a lot of people fail? I mean, how tempting is it when there's no money, you can't pay rent, you can't, and even food, to hold that back? I mean, I think I will tell you there are times I did it and it didn't end well.
Same.
Okay.
No, same. Yeah. Sometimes you get tempted. You're like, well, I mean, if I don't pay the rent, we will not be living here. So I'm going to pay the rent and try to catch up. And yeah, that doesn't necessarily work out the way it should. But yeah, I understand, and I've done that for sure. So
that's a challenge. And a lot of people, I mean, we've sat with people that are, oh yeah, I go to church and I'm a person of faith and all that, and we're going through their budget. And inevitably this happens more often than not, right? We're going through the budget, they're making, 50, 80, 90 grand a year, and it's like, okay, what do you spend on subscriptions? What do you spend on gym memberships? Tithing, giving, $20.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not our time to be judging or anything like that, and we're not the judge anyways, but we're thinking, no wonder you have no money. I mean, even though you're making it, no wonder you have no money because you don't have this right? So the business partner thing, you had mentioned to me, because things have turned around, things are going well at this particular point, and I think you told me not too long ago that one of the most enjoyable things is the giving part. Right. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, going back to tithing, and you mentioned robbing God, that I firmly believe that the foundation of our financial success, or at least the growing of our financial success now, is because we are tithers and it's consistent. As a matter of fact, it's not even just tithing, because we talk about 10%. There's another level to that. You know this as well. It's tithes and offerings to the storehouse, right? And there was a time in business, and this is why I know it holds true, and this is why I love to have mentorship, because I was talking to that same individual who introduced me to the director of the leadership program, and I called him one day. It was business. It was extreme frustration time. It was another time money wasn't going well. Business wasn't going well. I was looking for some new people to train. It wasn't working out. And I called him and he asked me, so how's everything going in your life? How's your walk? How's these things? Everything's fine. He was like, how's your tithing? I was like, tithing is actually really good. He was like, sweet, how's your offering? And I was like, what do you mean? Right. He was like, well, tithing is like giving God the minimum. Right? So like, how would you feel if somebody, like, you're believing in somebody and they give you the minimum back? Which the minimum is great to give, but what if it's just the minimum and you have the ability to give more? There's no specific amount, just whatever God puts in your heart to give extra, whatever it is. I did that. We had that conversation, and the next day, I did an interview with somebody that literally changed my entire business the next day. Why? Because all I did, we used the PushPay app at my church. All I did was as soon as I got off the phone, I went to PushPay, I gave something extra, and literally everything he told me held true. And to this day, like, my my business, my life, my finances wouldn't be the same if it weren't for that one individual coming into the business and working and doing those things from that conversation. So it's number one, it's vital. Number two, in those time periods where I didn't know where their money was going to come from to pay the bills and things like that, the reason why they got paid is because I already know God's got my back. One of the things about prayer and one of the things about tithing is God literally says in the Bible, challenge me in those times and see if I'm not good or not just. And I did. I was like, all right, you told me in these situations to challenge you. You know I'm a tither. You know I'm giving my offerings. Where is this going to come from? Let's make this happen, and it happened. A lot of times it was just from unexpected sources. Sometimes it was me physically trying to make it happen. But regardless, it happened. And that's why I knew that, yes, this absolutely works. But also, it's definitely more of a long-term thing. Like in the financial industry, we talk about compound interest. There's no better investment than investing back into God, period. That's true. The returns are ridiculous. I'll put it that way.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the challenge and the test. I don't know of any other place in Scripture where God actually tells us to do that. I mean, normally you're not supposed to put the Lord God to the test, but this is the one place where he says, you think I'm lying to you? Just do it and watch. And he will come through. Now, as we're discussing all this, having been on the other side of it, we can already feel the tension. There are those that are out there going, they're just sitting there doing this podcast, trying to get me to give to churches and try to do all this thing. And I don't like talking about this because I'm broke and I'm struggling and I hate when people are trying to get my money. Just so you know, we're actually trying to get you more money, not trying to get it where you have less. And I totally understand, we both do, where you're coming from at this particular point because we've been there. For so many times and so many years and struggled with this and know where you are. So we're going to go ahead and continue through this process right now. And that is that let's see what happens now when you eventually get the money part out of the way, right?
Okay.
So I believe, we were talking about this before we came on today a little bit. I personally do not believe that we were created to live our lives, spending our whole lives for a job. Okay, now the reason I say that is the way I define job, which is something we do for one reason and one reason alone, for the money. If you ask yourself, whatever your job is, if they stopped paying you tomorrow, would you still do it? If the answer is no way, then you only do it for the money, and that's what a job is. I personally believe that we are created to follow callings, and to have that impact, to have that purpose. All right? But there are times in life when we have jobs. Let's face it, God has us have jobs, and because it's for that reason alone, and we need to get the money and all those type of things. But the idea is to get out of that. Okay? So once that is out of the way, and he starts to provide that through, and this should be the goal, how are you starting to see life differently now? Focusing more on doing what you feel called to do versus what you feel you have to do.
Well, there's a couple of things in that question, mainly just because, and you kind of mentioned it when you were going over, alluding to the question, is sometimes we are in jobs for a specific reason, for a specific purpose. And the one thing about our purpose and calling is it is designed and created to help other people, right? So every single person's on this earth to help everyone else, right? That's kind of why we were created. Everybody has their own individual gifts. Your gift's not my gift, my gift's not your gift, those types of things. And they all have to do with our calling. And a lot of times, some of those things are grooming us to be able to have the things that we have in the future, right? So there is that. Now, when it comes down to the money thing and getting it out the way, it's so much easier. Like we always say, like you can have a choice to kind of be broke. You can have the choice to have some income, have some money, have some savings, all that stuff. Trust me, this side over here is a lot better when it comes to the being more simple in life and being able to focus on directly those things 100%.
Right.
So me and my family right now, we get the benefit to be able to, I mean, we're working from home. I'm doing everything via Zoom at this point, right? So
Sure.
I will go and sit down with somebody and then on Zoom, and then right after open the door to my home office, and there's my kids running around acting crazy. I have the door closed. I have my AirPods on so they didn't hear it. I hear it in the background, but I pick them up. We have some fun. We go in the little ball pit in the room, that kind of thing. So, but also it allows me to really legitimately focus on what that calling is and have more time to really kind of get in and sit and ponder and pray on what that specifically is and take steps towards it. And it's interesting how it's always based off of some of the things that you learned along the way. So for me, my calling has to do with business, entrepreneurship, and leadership, right? But leading God's way and teaching other people how to do that. And it's so crazy to me, and it's not crazy, it's just how this is supposed to go, that in the time of peak frustration, when God finally answered a prayer, for me, it was directly to a program, was just leadership and entrepreneurship development, God's way, that I've been teaching as a coach for 6 years or so now.
Right.
And now I get the opportunity to teach people on my team, people in my organization, all of these different concepts and do it in a massive scale. And I can scale it as well. I'm creating a leadership series right now based off of some of the things that I've read over the course of time, some of the things I've experienced, and some of the things for the program to be able to help anybody learn how to, what we call, master themselves so they can help other people do the same thing. But the money part gives me the freedom to be able to do it, but it also gives me the moral authority to be able to teach it, because the goal is to master you so you can get to a point where you can help other people. But there's a lead by example portion of it as well, right? Sure. You can't lead somebody you can't lead somebody to a place that you have not been yet. Right. So we've been in a position where we've been broke, struggling paycheck to paycheck, not knowing where the money is going to be. Now we're in a position to where we don't necessarily have to think about money anymore. And we can teach other people how to do and get to the same place because we've lived it. And that's why we lived it in the first place. So for me, the money part is more about the freedom and ability to focus. When you can focus on the other things, but there's so much stress and other noise that come out of you, it's much more difficult to do so. And it's really hard to see yourself in the future, like when you're just stuck in your current situation. Like you can do that, you should have a vision for what that looks like, but you're not really going to focus on that vision. Now every single day I can focus on it, and the best part is we're living the passion, we're living the purpose, we're living the calling, and that makes it so much easier.
So everything, like you mentioned, the jobs, the different things that we go through, all of that is a part of who we become. While we're there, the calling of those jobs is not necessarily the task itself, but wherever you are right now, it's probably the people that you're connecting with. Those that you're working with, people that are around you, those that you come in contact with. Obviously, God has you in a particular place that you are at the moment, probably for that reason. But we're always moving forward and looking to what He has. I remember one time when, looking back to that time, I had $28. Part of the reason that no money was going to be coming through is because the church was struggling so badly at that particular moment. A lot of people were struggling, and I got to the point where I wasn't going to get paid, to be the pastor. And so nothing was coming in except for what my wife was bringing in as a teacher at that particular moment. And I remember somebody coming up to me, a good friend of mine in the church, and saying, well, now that we can't pay you, I totally understand if you're going to leave, or if you're going to, look for somewhere else. And I remember going home and I could hear God kind of asking me the question saying, well, do you want to leave? And my response was, no, that's not why I do it. I do it because I want to serve you in this particular way. And he said, well, good, then we've got that out of the way then. When you have to make that decision. So we get it out of the way. A lot of people are hearing this and they may be thinking to themselves that saying that comes up, oh, you guys are talking about money and money isn't everything, right? But the reality is, when this is still the struggle, yes, it is. Because it's like, oh, you guys want to go out to dinner? No. Well, we'd love to go out to dinner, but no, well, can't afford it. Oh, there's this I have a neighbor that she's selling her car, old lady. She hardly ever drove it. It's been in the garage, all that, and she only wants $4,000 for it. It's in mint condition. You want it? Of course I want it, but I can't buy it, so I don't have all the opportunities. How many times did you consistently just look on the right side of the menu?
Every time.
Right?
Right.
You know, and growing up with like 3 kids, we go into Carl's Jr. or wherever we were, and I'd see what I wanted, and as they ordered their food, mine kept getting smaller. Right? Did you do the same thing where you hardly ever ordered what you actually wanted?
Well, yes, but at the same time, we really never went out to order anything because we knew we didn't have the money. So it was a problem that didn't come up too often. I'll put it that way.
Got it. Yeah, I totally hear you on that. And a lot of times we'd sit there and say, somebody said, oh, don't you want to? Oh, no, we don't care about that. But that's just a defense mechanism.
Right.
But money starts to control absolutely everything. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, even in just the category of, like, when you talk about given, it shall be given unto you, right? So even when it comes to giving, that yes, you can give your time, effort, energy, and that's what serving is, but giving financially to other causes and things like that is also a blessing that you can bless other people with.
Right.
And without the funds to do so, it's very difficult to be able to do so. So it allows me to do that. Like me and Tatiana, we're literally tracking, and this might sound weird, but I track everything when it comes to business, whether it's clientele, whether it's training new agents in the organization, whether it is our income, but we also track our tithing. Like we actually have a tithing goal this year for amounts that we're looking to give to the church. And also just that's just kind of what we do and how we focus, but it's allowed a lot of good. Like our church opens up orphanages and things like that. They had an anniversary offering that we just gave some money to for extra that had nothing to do with tithes, nothing to do with regular offerings that we do, but it's a blessing to be able to do that. Like my wife, at least Tatiana, is the type of person. I'm very generous myself, but she's definitely that person that if we were sitting at a restaurant and she sees a family and she thinks they look cool, she's like, well, give me their check. So that's not something we've actually actively done a whole lot of, but she's the type of person that would love to do those types of things, and it gives us the opportunity to do those types of things. So at the end of the day, money is just a tool, and having more of it means that you have more nails in the to nail into the wall, to be able to do some good with. So
isn't it true that it's much more fun to give a gift than to receive one?
Yes and no. I like receiving gifts
I like
too,
receiving
personally.
Them too.
No, but no, seriously. But yes, it really is. Me and my entire family is going to Disney World, and Tatiana's mom and her whole extended family. My parents are going as well, and we were able to pay for my parents' whole way there. So everything, and that's really cool to be able to do. It helps us because obviously there's more people that watch the kids, and we talk about raising kids with community. But it's really cool to be in a position to give back just to our parents who work so hard to raise us and get us to the point where we're at today, that we can do those types of things. So that honestly, yes, is really fun. It's really fulfilling, and we want to do a lot more of it. But if somebody paid for me to go to Disney World, I wouldn't be mad at it either. So it's a little bit of both.
Definitely not. It's definitely, I mean, don't take this wrong. If you want to send me a gift, I'm more than happy
that part.
And I'll believe it. But I think what you're saying is very true, to be able to connect and to bless others. And it's not, why is it our responsibility to try our best to get this in alignment with God? Because just like they tell you on the plane, it's very hard to help somebody else until you get your own oxygen mask on. Right? And so I know that before that, and we both experienced that as well, there were so many times when we wanted to help somebody else that had a need. And there was just no way to do it. Except for just a physical act, which of course we would do whenever we could. But even sometimes the greatest time is just they don't even know where it came from. Just secretly, it's like, here it is, and to take care of something. Just to know, not because that makes us special or anything, but God has blessed and now gives us the opportunity to bless.
Right.
And it's just being faithful with what he's doing. So putting that along there now, let's talk about that. As God provides, and each one of us has this responsibility in life, the Bible talks about the parable of the talents. Mm-hmm. And that, what we're given, we're supposed to make the most of what we're given. Not everyone's doled out the same amount, and whether it's abilities or whether it's resources or whatever. But God looks at us to be responsible with, do we make the most out of what the opportunity that he gave? Right? So how are you viewing that? You kind of touched on it some. I mean, the goal to maximize things out, obviously you're still a young man, much younger than me. And there's, Lord willing, a lot of time left. So what are some of the ways that you see, what's some of the vision that possibly he's put in your heart, Tatiana's heart, for moving forward?
Yeah, well, to address when you mentioned the parable of the talents, it's funny because most people aspire to be that 5-talent person. They have a bunch of abilities, whether it's with income, whether it's with abilities, with things that God blessed them with. And I'm honestly fortunate enough to be the 1-2. I can do 1 to 2 things really, really well, and I honestly, personally ignore the rest, but it allows me to be able to focus. So let's talk about, you said vision for the family. So a couple of things. Number one, when we got married, one of the best things that we were able to do is 2 things. So obviously we did some marriage counseling with you, which we appreciate. But number 2 was we actually joined the marriage ministry in our church while we were engaged. Nice. And they allowed us to talk through a lot of the things that we would have had issues with in our marriage before we ever got married. But one of the things that they talked about, and one of the things I'm a firm believer in, is having a vision for your marriage, right? So it's not just, or a mission for it. So it's not just you guys being married, but you actually have marriage goals. Like for us, me and Tatiana, our goal is to be an example of what a godly family looks like, so others can know what that is, and that we can kind of keep the sanctity of marriage across the board for everybody, and they can kind of see that ultimately. Right. So that's a big part of it. So everything that we do aligns with that. Okay. And going forward, that's ultimately the goal. We're definitely not the traditional family when it comes to our views on a lot of different things. So we have 2 boys, and whenever we have another child, if we ever have another child, that's going to be awesome. But I'm not a huge fan of just the way we do traditional life. I believe that there's so much more to experience. I want our kids to be able to experience learning by doing and going out in the world. So if they want to see history of ancient Rome, why don't we just go and they can experience it instead of just reading it in a book or sitting in a classroom. So those are our visions. Those are the things that we aspire to have. And I mean, honestly, we have really big visions. Some of it is, through the material. Some of it's through being able to help others. Yeah. But one of the things I was confirmed everything is crazy to me how much everything goes back to that leadership program that I talked about. Because when I was going through the certification to be a coach there, the individual that started it, we did a session with him, and he actually started speaking over several people in there as coaches, and he said to me, and you're going to think this is funny, I don't know if I ever told you this, he was like, I know your future, you're going to be a pastor. And I was like,
I can see it.
No. I told him no. I was like, no. Yeah. I mean, I nothing against being a pastor, and I love, being able to go to church and receive the word, and I love individual pastors that have a message about positivity and about teaching, all that stuff. It's just, I knew down deep that I'm not going to be standing in front of a church, doing a message or something like that. Cut to me sitting in front of you at a church right now doing a podcast, But what I found out is that being a pastor, being a teacher of the word, doesn't mean that you have to have a church congregation, things like that. I remember very distinctly, I believe it was 4 years ago, we were at an event, a company conference. It was in Las Vegas. And afterwards, I was doing a meeting with my entire team, and I was going over different things. And one of the individuals I started with walked up to me after and was like, isn't this cool that this is your ministry? Yeah. And then it clicked. I was like, oh, That's what he meant. So I literally get to teach, like I said, leadership, personal growth, becoming successful, those types of things, all biblically based to a wide audience in entrepreneurship. And that's my congregation. And that's how that's where that came from. I just didn't recognize it there. So it all aligns. And it has, for me especially, 100% to do with business, with financial gain, with success, because that's the lane I'm supposed to be in. That's my purpose. That's my calling. So I have to be a good steward of it. I have to be a good example of it. And ultimately, and this is just the truth, nobody listens to you until they perceive that you're worth listening. So for me, I have to up the income for people to even bother to listen, because if they're
sad but true.
I mean, if they don't want my life if I'm not living it the way they would want to live it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so funny that you bring all this up, because I don't consider myself to be the traditional pastor, quite honestly. In fact, I was even told by a mentor who was very instrumental in getting me here that it was a mistake. He stood right in front of where we're sitting right now. I mean, I can literally reach out when he told me it was the biggest mistake he had ever made.
Wow.
And that was really kind of devastating, because it seemed like, what have I been doing for the last 20 years at that particular point in time? And when I went into business and connected with you and all the others, I thought, well, over here, I'm not going to be a pastor. Okay, I'm going to be something else. And before you knew it, everyone was Pastor Jay. And it's like, I can't get away from it, you know? And so it's like, God, make up your mind. I'm not quite understanding. And then, you know, the church often has been small, but God's always given me a big vision. And so even what we're doing at this moment was because I'm sitting in bed one night and he says, if they won't all come in the church building, then just start a podcast and start different things, and we're going to reach out to wherever. And that's what we're doing right now.
100%.
So that's that vision. I really, you know, I'm excited about yours and what God's putting in there as well.
Thank
and
you.
It's all tied into what we're all doing.
And it's fun. It's
it is
legitimately fun.
And life should be fun, right?
Well, and one thing I will say, even through the challenging times, and this is something, as far as perspective is concerned, that's what's helped me along this time, is having the perspective that this is all a process.
Sure.
Right? And there's no official, like, quote unquote physical destination, because our purpose always grows. There's individuals that are completely financially independent, that love God, that are continuing to grow, that have a new vision and a new mission at like 70, 75 years old to touch and help a whole lot of people. Why? Because it's not a specific place you're going to get to. It's the growth that you have while you get there, the people that you affect, the things that you enjoy along the way, and ultimately the progression of you continuing to grow long term. That is really the fulfillment that comes with calling and purpose.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I have really enjoyed our time that we've had today. I thank you for coming and for doing this. I'm going to give you a freebie here. Okay? So instead of me asking you the question, you get to just forget I'm here. You get to look right to the camera. Imagine the person that you're talking to out there that maybe just is really struggling right now. I didn't tell you this ahead of time necessarily, so what has God laid on your heart to tell them at this moment?
Well, it's actually similar to what I just mentioned. Life's a process. First and foremost, don't beat yourself up. There's something that I learned a long time ago, that is, don't doubt that God is God, the all-sufficient one. You think about, he was the person that created you, me, the earth, everything in it, the water, the plants, the animals, and you're over here thinking about money and something physical, that there's trillions upon trillions. I don't know how much money is out in the world, and you're talking about only having $10 in your bank account. There's more, and he can provide it. Just trust, have faith, continue the process, and know that at the end of the day, it's all worth it. And it's supposed to be this way for you if you're living and doing the things that quote unquote supposed to be doing. Now, everybody falls along the way, and that's why I said don't beat yourself up about it. Just stand up, look proud, walk tall, pray, believe, have faith, and put in the work, and go wait on God. By wait, I mean serve him and his place, and he'll lead you to exactly where you're supposed to be.
Amen. Thank you so much. And I just want to appreciate every single one of you that's been watching. Feel free to share this with other people. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well on Audacious Faith. Share in the Facebook groups if you're in there. Let's spread the word so that many others can be blessed. God bless all of you.